Right, so a 4-day strike begins for our junior doctors today as the permanently in hiding, it would seem, Health Secretary Steve Barclay, that is his name in case you'd missed him completely, quite easily done, has only deigned to offer them a miserable 2% pay rise, despite inflation currently hovering around 10.4%. That is one hell of a real terms pay cut for people who deserved all of our respect and got claps every week not so long ago. The experienced consultants of the future. But it seems this government would rather drive them away and further the collapse of the NHS. 2% is one of the most insulting offers I've seen after what has been several months of pretty rampant strike action across multiple sectors in our society. So did they really expect these medics to accept such an offer and not react as they are doing now? As a result of the strike action, apparently some 350,000 appointments and operations will have had to have been cancelled. NHS managers, not the sort of people suffering in their own wage packets over this, you understand, have moaned that healthcare will be on a knife edge because of the junior doctors' trade union, the British Medical Association, having balloted for and achieved the threshold for strike action to take place. It's funny how it always gets told from that perspective in the mainstream media, isn't it? Never from that of the medics themselves. But think about it and put yourself in their shoes for a moment. Would you carry on doing a job that wasn't paying you enough to live on without doing or saying something? A job where the hours are so long, it is impossible to take on additional work alongside it to supplement your income. And you have spent years in education and study investing your time in what you regard as your vocation, for it is more than just a job, to find out you'd probably make more money working in Tesco's. People who enter this profession have to, I think, be wired up in a certain way. Empathy, giving a damn about other people, things that can't actually be taught, I don't think, that are prerequisites to having a successful career in medicine. And sadly, they're being shafted by a government full of people who have no shortage of cash themselves, or always awarding themselves massive pay rises, or devoid of anything resembling empathy and simply see the NHS as a block to more of those lucrative consultancies with private companies, vested interests that they can earn six figures working something like 10 hours a month for, which would be 10 hours none of these junior doctors would have time to make cash on the side because they're too busy treating us. How many MPs use the NHS and not private healthcare, I wonder? Because frankly, the lot of them should be banned from using private healthcare. The NHS would very quickly get fixed then, wouldn't it? But let's put the pay issue back in perspective a bit more, because this isn't recent news. Doctors' pay has been slashed for years, and not just by the Tories, but by Labour before them. Junior doctors have seen their pay cut by 26% since 2008, the time of the global financial crash. That's without making considerations for inflation whatsoever. So stick that on top now. How are they expected to work like they do, the hours they do, and make enough to live on when the value of the work that they do has been decimated like it has? They should be looking at some of the biggest pay increases being awarded off the back of industrial action just to make up some of the ground they've lost. Not the smallest. And when it's below inflation rates anyway, what's being offered, then it isn't an increase anymore. It's just dragging out and prolonging their misery. How demoralised must they be? Strike action is the last resort after all, but when the Health Secretary is harder to find than a needle in a haystack, let alone being prepared to negotiate a reasonable pay offer, is it any wonder? In fact, all of this is right up Steve Barclay's street, a man with no medical experience, an MP who will take on any position he gets offered, it would seem, and lash it up, whatever he's put in charge of. A man with as much sense of efficiency and order as a frigging jumble sale, because he's never wanted to give them more money. Even during the recent cost of living crisis, where various government departments were all asking for extra cash from the Treasury, he was saying he could make do with what healthcare already had. Just last November, he was saying this, and he wouldn't be asking for more money for the NHS for any aspect himself. He could have had more cash for the NHS for the asking. There is always more money. We only need to print it. We control our own currency. Ignore anybody telling you the UK could go bankrupt. And Barclay said no thank you to it. It's impossible to negotiate with a man, of course, that nobody can find either, let alone one that thinks like that, save for the mainstream media who Barclay is happy to talk to and acting like some kind of a hard man and accusing doctors and their unions of being militant when he's not even talking to them. He's too afraid to. All these people want is after 15 years of having their wages depressed, as I said, they've lost 26% of the value of their incomes in that time, is a credible pay offer from the government, because 2% is shit. And I'd hope not one person watching this would disagree with that. And if you do, please tell me how much difference an extra 2% on your income would make with the cost of everything around us these days. Justify it. There needs to be some willingness to move towards some degree of pay restoration here, because otherwise there will be no next generation of senior doctors, let alone a new cohort of junior doctors following behind to keep our NHS moving on. This has already been happening, of course. The erosion of the workforce, those NHS managers bemoaning the strike action, they might be a bit quieter. Staffing levels weren't already unsafe. And actually, word is they have been unsafe for the last 10 years. That is entirely on the Tories' watch, of course. People have for years been disincentivized, though, from entering medicine, as you can see by all of this. If people cannot afford to live with all the time, dedication, and effort that goes into learning to treat people appropriately and save lives, if these people of all professions are somehow not worth the money to this government, then are any of us worth anything to them? The ball right now is in Steve Barclay's court. He could have come to the table before today. He could have put forward an offer. He could have prevented the strikes happening and the cancellations of all these medical procedures the mainstream media are happy to tell us about that are a consequence of the strike action. But instead, he refused to come to the table. He refused to negotiate, unless the BMA called off the strikes first. But when Barclay has had ample opportunity to negotiate before things reached this point and did not, why should the BMA or their members trust him on this now and give up their negotiating position that they've now been pushed into in the hope that this time Barclay just happens to show up? It's no surprise the answer to that was no. Every day the strikes continue is another day that Steve Barclay could prevent by simply making a better pay offer. He'd rather keep hiding instead. Pay no attention to the news either, as they insist on telling you the NHS will collapse if junior doctors don't go back to work. If they are that indispensable, then pay them what they're worth. Make sure you place the blame where it belongs if you're a victim of this disruption, because blaming these doctors absolutely isn't it. Solidarity to them all. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Support the doctors. Cheers, folks.